Welcome to another episode of the Sipping and Tripping podcast, where we connect with amazing people. Today's conversation is all about the day in the life of an Italian, where we talk about culture, upbringing, food, restaurants, a whole bunch of stuff. Um, I am your host, Desmond Black, and the person that's sipping and tripping with me today is a woman of many gifts and talents. She is none other than Miss Heather Ann Ferri. How you doing today, and how's your week so far?
Oh, I'm doing great today. And well, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the weather's starting to get warm again. So very happy about that.
So it's funny you say that because I live in New Jersey, and we like neighbors. But here right now it is freezing. We had like 4 great days where it was nice and warm, and then it just went away. We got rain
Oh,
and
we had a major storm come through too, as well. It took down some trees and that, but now we're seeing the light again.
all right. So I mean that's always a positive thing, like I just need that warm weather. But it's one of those things about life that's so funny because when it's wintertime, we're like, oh God, can't wait for summer, right? Because it's so cool. And summer it'd be brutally hot. We go, oh my God, I can't wait for the winter. So I think like spring is like it in between. So spring is okay. You have your hot days, your warm days, your cold days. It's a little balance there. So it's not bad. But that's life at this
Yeah.
point, at our age, at this stage of our life, we should be used to it. Um, so on this platform, I like to conversate, educate, and entertain. And with that being said, I just want to speak to you a little bit and get to know you a little bit. So with that being said, do you have any siblings?
I have a brother,
Okay, older, younger?
older, 3 years older.
Okay, are you guys close?
He's not in my life right now.
Gotcha. I mean, it's okay. Um,
We were very close growing up, though.
yeah, sometimes it be like that. Sometimes when we grow up together, we grow differently. So you have your path, he has his path, and
Yeah,
it's
we
life.
definitely have our own soul database. For me, I don't know how much you've read my background, but I grew up with a lot of generational traumas, and
Right.
my brother was my lifeguard, my saving grace, because he didn't witness the abuse that I was enduring with my mom behind closed doors, so he wasn't there to protect me. In my eyes, I saw him dealing with what I would label as abuses. But yeah, we played a lot in the forest. We played all day long. I idolized my brother growing up. But when you get into adulthood, and I went down the show business path, he went down the marriage path.
Mm.
You get into your own programs and you get into your own life. And then I went into in my 30s. I came back home to heal generational traumas. And, for a lot of people out there who are brave enough to enter that world of healing trauma, it's not easy. And what tends to happen is a lot of your family will fight back in different programmings and ways without even consciously knowing it. They don't want to believe things, or they don't want to see things, because they have to look within themselves at some other stuff. So it's complicated. I believe in America, we're kind of at a crossroads where families are struggling, unfortunately. And one of the messages is I think we need a new type of trauma center for healing, so.
Mm. I love that. I love that. So you mentioned marriage before, your brother. So are you or have you ever been married?
I have never been married. That's a question that sometimes comes up just in environments because of my careers and because of the outside appearance, in essence. But I'm 53 years old, and I walk around my neighborhood with an older gentleman. He's about 20 years older than me. And he got married for the first time around my age at 52, 53 years old. And we talk because he waited. He really waited for the right one. He really waited to really know himself. And unfortunately, in the last 2 years, he's been grieving because his wife died suddenly. But I remember them walking together in the neighborhood, and I really felt they had a special thing, going
Right.
on. And his grieving really reminded me why I've waited, because the marriage they had for 15 years was really, it was love. I mean, it was real deep love, and it wasn't taken for granted. Sometimes when we marry young, we don't know it, but we have these habits and we take the person for granted and we don't really know. So yeah, I've been sort of a solo act for a long time. And partly it's because I've had a lot of generational trauma to heal. And I didn't want to marry for trauma bonding. You hear these words, and also be codependent. I really wanted to heal my ancestors. I come from a lineage of a lot of trauma.
Got you. So, are you religious?
I am not. I do not follow any religion whatsoever. Yet people think I'm religious because I have a very holy energy about me. People have religious experiences wherein they're in the classroom with me, especially with the brain protocols I work with for PTSD, OCD, and childhood trauma. People have Jesus experiences, Mother Mary experiences. I connect to what I label as the Holy Family. I connect to all the characters of the Holy Family, not just Jesus, but Mother Mary, Father Joseph, Grandmother Anna. But I connect to them in a very organic way, not a way that was written in a book. And what's really interesting in the trauma classroom is when people are doing these Sanskrits and these meditations, they start to awaken these experiences with those members of the Holy Family that isn't written in a book. And it becomes more organic for them. And it allows them to lead in their life as examples, because I feel like the whole family has been broken. Everybody in the family must be responsible for all of their karmas, positive or negative. So when you do unto others, that will be done unto you, is not just a statement. And I think in the United States right now, I'm going deep right now, but I'm going to go to a deep dive. I think we're finally seeing that karma is going to have to happen with predators. So for so long, historically, predators have gotten away with predatoring and getting away with evil. And now we're at the climax, just like when you're healing generational traumas, where that can no longer be on Mother Earth. It's not going to sustain anymore. So that's a long answer for, am I religious?
I got you. So it was a question I seen in your profile that I just wanted to ask, because it's a very good question, and it allows you to open up however you see please. So it says, who is the speaker, singer, and intuitive healer?
Yeah, that's me.
That's you.
I sing all the time now. I have songs that I'm going to be producing this year. Healer, I was born a healer. When you really start to understand, I have a book out that starts to understand my life. And I was in a private trauma practice for many, many years, thousands of stories. Intuition has always been there, but I think the things that I'm going to be teaching in the future is really not just energy, but brain protocols to help people become holier. There's been a lot of mind control, and it's obviously entered my life. A lot of psychic attacks we hear, and we hear this online, what's really happening behind closed doors. And we need to get to a holier place within ourselves if we want to, if in my opinion, if we want to stay here on Mother Earth. So what I've experienced in the classroom with like just the average person, just so you know, like blue collar people, is they are far more intelligent and intuitive than I would say the people that I've experienced on platforms that have this following, and then you come to their event and they do this witchcraft on stage, and then you go home with no tolls. Like when you start really working inside, which is a brave thing to do, and I've seen a lot of just the average people do it, they are gold. Like their souls are evolving. And my job is to inspire that average person to keep going, because don't become codependent on people on platforms. That's all I have to say. You do not know who they are behind closed doors. And having been in a lot of tribes and a lot of groups, they are not what you seem. Just like with me, don't follow me, learn, take what works and use it as action, not reaction.
Gotcha. I love that. So what is it about your career that led you to invest your heart and soul to it?
Well, I mean, I was in show business for 10 years. So I went from a dance scholarship at Point Park University, doing a lot of shows. So I trained as a professional dancer because I was raised by a borderline narcissist psychopath, who
Mm,
I was almost trying to murder me. So she really wanted me in the spotlight. So I was always in the newspaper. You kind of hear the story. This is all crumbling down from Hollywood and the music industries. Even in our government, I mean, trauma is the thing that the devil or the evil want because they can manipulate it easily because you have weaknesses. They're not your weaknesses, but that's what happens when a predator predates on you. You have traumas and they have to be healed. And so they tend to be the ones stepped in. We have the contract for you. It's got all the flashy stuff. Come on in. We'll save you. We're going to love you, but we're going to overwork you all day long. So I grew up and then going into show business. I was mostly in Broadway theater arts, which is different than the movie industry. But I was kind of lucky because early on, I met some really good, genuine souls who kind of set me apart and kind of said, look, you're going to want to be careful here. Fame isn't what you think it is. You're going to want to read every line in a contract, things like that. And one of them is Jimmy Slide, who is a famous tap legend. I was honored to tap dance with all the greats and then go on to do my own stuff with tap dancing. Specifically, that was like a niche for me. But those men, I wish we had them right now. We really need them right now in present form as examples because they were the real deal. They may not have been the richest men. They may not have had all the fancy cars, but they had genuine, unconditional love and soul. I'm not saying they were perfect, but I'm saying they were a really good example of caring about human beings, and really just bonding in the arts. So the arts in show business, I loved the tap world, but I started to not like the shows that I was being sort of sent out on auditions. It didn't really represent they wanted to stereotype me.
right.
You see this, everybody has a stereotype when you look at the outside shell, right? It takes time
Right.
to know the inside shell. And I'm a really, really deep soul that's been through hell and back. And most people don't understand that because I don't wear it on my face,
Right.
So it's like, so I started writing shows off Broadway and I started working with women. And that started to branch me out and saying women have a lot more to say than what we're putting on the stages. And then when I went back home, I started to work. I still was thrown into show business when I came back to Pittsburgh, but that's when I started to be led into trauma work because I had a ton of trauma to heal. When people look at pictures on my website, I look inflamed, I look old. You go through all these stages, but I mastered 8 ancient sciences within about 20 years, which is a blueprint in itself for a trauma center. But how did I master those? Well, I had to heal, and I was on a mission to heal the women in my bloodline, which come from slavery and trafficking. So there is a lot of Black in my bloodline. So that was a huge part of it. And I didn't really understand until the Divine Mother, I've always been led by the Divine Mother, was leading me down the path, how complicated it would be, but I'm at the end of it. So it's interesting. The trauma classroom, I want to inspire people to heal. I want to inspire them to sign up because you will discover things about yourself when you start to learn medical meditations, and you will be shocked. It will change your whole world. And it's not easy. So I can't just give you a pill to pop, but it is worth knowing thyself. You hear that phrase in the Matrix, know thyself, know thyself. What the heck does that mean?
Right.
Nobody else is going to tell you it. So like my body has anti-aged because I had to shake out trauma. My skin has anti-aged. My energy is anti-aged. And it's all because of layers and layers of bloodline trauma. Now I'm in a different stage, Desmond. I'm heading into a different career. I'm heading into getting more on stage again, talking about trauma, singing my songs, cracking a few jokes, getting business partners to do the right thing in businesses, being a consultant for blueprints, You get to different stages. The 20-year-olds are here. The 30-year-olds are here. The 40. I'm in the 50s now. I've mastered. I'm a master. You know what I mean? So it's building up. And, you know, even when I was in the tap dancing career and people were calling me a tap master and I was traveling and teaching, I didn't really consider myself a tap master, even though everybody was labeling me that, because when you're around masters that are like 30, 40 years older than you, who have been around and really, you know what I mean? Like, they're the masters. I'm the student. Well, now I'm the master. Okay. I'm the master of healing. I'm the master of generational trauma. I do have the trauma blueprint. I have been through it hell and back many, many times in this life. I know what I'm talking about. So there's a journey, and I inspire that because sometimes I think the youth, no offense, wants to skip steps. You like the hacks, you like the quick fixes, and you won't become like, even if it's like martial arts, you don't become a master overnight. You have to go through the steps. You can't skip steps.
Right. The trials and tribulations is very important. You know,
it's everything. My ancestors went through them. And we read about it in a book, but a lot of the culture doesn't understand them. They don't understand what Harriet Tubman really went through and why she actually had to go to Benjamin Franklin and how amazing that relationship was, that he chose to help her and he chose to start to go against his bloodline. You know, these are deep rooted issues. And I think in this time period, we're coming to a place where we all have people in our family system or in our bloodline that just choose not to change. They choose not to heal. And you just have to release it and let it go. But I think we're coming into a time period where those who are truly doing the inner work, because people put on a great show. I know it. I could feel it now. I could see it in their auras, but a lot of people can't. They just follow. I mean, look at all the psychopaths on the Epstein files. I mean, look at, we only have half the list, but they were all the book sales, the speakers, the thought leaders, the healers. I mean, they were all there, but we followed them because we never healed trauma. We never had a proper trauma center. We have been operating by watching psychopaths and narcissists all day long. And now the tables are forcing, they have to turn in order for the higher conscious, pure-hearted souls to not only get the tools they need to heal, but to have a society where we're all equal again. And I mean that, like, literally and figuratively, that we're all equal again.
Right. I mean, you know, I feel like we're getting there. You know, it's going to be, it's always going to be a process. Because
I don't think we're there. I don't think we're there. That's what I'm saying.
Because people are scared of change. So it's like for people to heal individually, it's a difficult task because it's the one thing that people are afraid of doing, and it's putting in the work. You know, a lot of people, like you said, are lazy and they get complacent and they're afraid to put in that work. You know,
they are definitely lazy, and but I will also say there's not really a proper trauma center. Like, I could debate anyone on stage on that right now, and I would love to. If anybody's out there, I would love to do it. There is not, and that's a reason. They did that on purpose. They did not offer certain healing tools in our mental health care system on purpose to keep us in a trauma loop, to keep us not being able to upgrade into the places that we're in. So there's laziness. I mean, look, we're being attacked on every end in America. We've got poisons in our water, poisons in our land, glyphosate. Somebody just sent me an email today saying, you've been talking about this issue for, I don't know, 7 years now. And now glyphosate is a national security threat in America. Nobody even knows. Half the time, people don't even know what that is, how that affects your gut, your brain. We've got attacks everywhere. But the truth is my issue is the billionaires need to step up, and they're not. The good guys who think they're good guys, we need some changes happening in the roots of our communities right now, in America right now. And I don't think they have the blueprint of knowing how to build that, because I think they're too detached from the everyday person, unfortunately. I just think they're too detached. They've been on platforms for too long, talking about the same thing for too long, and it makes them feel good for too long. And now it's like, oh my gosh, are we going to collapse in America? Because the average person, it's just such a disconnect. That's the disconnect that's happening right now. So I send that out there because everybody's going to have to get a little uncomfortable with change. And I don't know what that means for the person listening to this, but everybody is. And I think we've put people who have money, as if they are successful. Well, we also saw the Epstein files. They sold their soul to the devil. What's successful about what's happening in America right now? How can anyone be okay with what's happening right now in America? I love America, and that's why I speak so openly right now about it. I love the people around me in my community, but man, we cannot continue to feed into the same money circle of the same sort of businesses. So when I say, like, with business, the business financial sector of even just like a restaurant that you work in. I grew up with that, a family restaurant. It needs to be structured so differently that people can actually make money at it. And that when you go into a restaurant, the food isn't poisoned, the water isn't poisoned, and that it's a healing center, even in a restaurant. Could you imagine going in a restaurant where there's no TVs, you can't put your cell phone on, where you go at a table and the healer is serving you. The healer is the waitress, and the healer is the waitress. And so you're going to respect the healer as the waitress. There's a whole psychology in every business that has to be restructured that nobody understands because everybody's so fixed, everybody's in their one little lane. Survival. We're in survival. And the elites have done an incredible job of doing that. Because they continue to create, we have a war going on that nobody wants, let's create traumas. So now we have a war that nobody wants, and we don't, it's not helping America, but we're just doing it because we have we have these energies. Yeah. Chaos. You're exactly right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, we know we have Satanists in the upper realms right now, and that's the battle. We are really in a true battle of light and dark. And so I commend anybody that is brave enough to heal traumas, brave enough to do their own healing work, and brave enough to walk in a godly, holy manner, because you matter. Everybody matters here. Right. So I love that you speak on traumas, because I'm a big advocate for a lot of things. And one of the topics that I really enjoy talking about is traumas and healing and therapy, along with like love and relationships. Right. So those are big things for me, like, especially trauma, because I've dealt with childhood trauma myself, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of discipline to root yourself from that and find yourself, love yourself, right? And, and love God, because God is love, right? So once you're in that space, then you have everything, right? Can't nobody break you as long as you love yourself, because as long as you love yourself, it's going to give you that drive and that motivation to keep moving forward. And that's that positive energy that I like to put out there to a lot of people. So I love that you talk about traumas. Now, speaking about traumas, I know it might be a tough, touchy subject, so you don't have to talk about anything you don't want to. But when you talk about childhood traumas, is there anything about that you would like to share with the world, to the viewers? Like, well, yeah, sure. I will. So my parents met in high school. They were high school sweethearts. They both came from serious generational trauma, bloodline traumas. So what made them, why were they attracted to each other? That question. So sometimes we're attracted to trauma because it's all we know from the past life of the bloodlines, right? So if we don't heal slavery in the 1800s, how do we, we're still bringing it through our bloodlines, right? We're still bringing through these issues. So, I had two pivotal moments in my life that I openly share, but there's a lot of complex things around it. I'm 7 years old. My father comes home. He's fired from his job. He's depressed. He's, confused. My grandfather fired him from the family business because he wouldn't sign a contract. Now, there's a lot of issues around that, But as a little girl, I'm taking on, okay, that family's no good. My dad is really depressed. My mom is screaming at him. We don't have security here. What's going to happen? Is my mom good? Like all this stuff starts to happen in your brain as a little girl. The next year, when I'm 8 years old, my father's working for another company. My brother leaves school before I do. My mother comes into my bedroom and starts to choke me almost to death, screaming horrific things. And this happens day after day after day, like a worst nightmare. So that is living in a house. And my mom never changed. She just became somebody else, which I call a slave owner archetype. So I eventually had severe brain damage. So when I say I have a trauma-centered blueprint, I know what I'm talking about here. I've gone through years and years of doing trauma work for myself and my clients. I've had clients all over the world, most of them with medical degrees. So I know what's not being taught. So yeah, I was over medicated from age 10 to 16. I never talked in my house. My tap shoes were my voice. When I went into show business and I was tapping with the masters, I was compared to as a black male. Do I look black? Am I a male? But I was compared to a black male because if you closed your eyes, you would have heard what? You would have heard pain. You would have heard suffering. You would have heard complex rhythms of jazz. So nobody can deny the complexities of my soul database. Jimmy Slide, I talk about a lot of my keynotes because he was a very spiritual and beautiful man who gave me his platform. And he really awakened that soul database because my maternal grandmother, her mother died during childbirth and her father was nowhere in sight. She had a darker skin that nobody talked about, never recognized. But when I was doing my ancestral work, I realized, oh, her dad had to be black. There's no question about this. So that starts these questions that what's sad to me when you're in the trauma room with people doing brain protocols is they know very little about themselves. And the brain rewiring and the meditation work that I do that isn't traditional, you probably have never heard about before, it's not on mainstream, it really helps people understand in their bodies their ancestral stories that nobody can deny. And then when they do that shaking and release it, they know themselves better and they know why this programming is happening. So I go through a lot of different interesting challenges in my life because of the programming. I'm breaking curses. I'm breaking generational patterns with these women who were slaves as well as myself in past lives and trafficked, and so, but it starts at the root. And, to go even deeper than that, and this is hours and hours of work. So when people go, wow, I just don't know. It's because you haven't done, the childhood brain protocol. But don't you want to know yourself? Because you can't keep reincarnating with more trauma. And I actually don't think everybody's going to continue to reincarnate on Mother Earth, because I think if you don't clean up enough of your karma and have a specific frequency, it's not going to match here. The tables are going to turn on Mother Earth. But when you go back to my childhood, when I do my work, which is in my first book, there's a book series. This would help people start to understand, because there's questions, 133 questions for people to actually start working on themselves. But I would walk downstairs after my mother abused me to run out the door, obviously, to school. And she would be sitting at the kitchen table eating a chocolate cake. So sugar was how to numb her frontal cortex of the brain. I became a sugar addict. Well, when I start to heal ancestrally, these women were slaves on sugar plantations. When you understand Harriet Tubman's story of sugar in the kitchen, you understand the roots of this. So sugar addictions are very deep for people ancestrally. That doesn't just come from a numbing pain. What is that pain about? And for me speaking today, it's huge. I was terrified to speak in my 20s and 30s. I thought I'd be killed for speaking, literally in my wiring. These women in my past were never allowed to speak ever in their life. They were choked, they were chained. So for me to come on platforms and speak my voice is what I am empowering the women who are going to rebirth into this, into Mother Earth with a higher frequency. And so that's just a little bit of, I come from a lot of trauma, and it shocks people because I'm really happy and it's not fake and I'm really at peace, but I'm a warrior. Like most people wouldn't be able to deal with the type of physical pain of shit. I mean, we're talking brain swelling. We're talking brain damage. That's why every healing module, I talk about water. I talk about medical grade water that nobody knows about. That matters.
Right. Well, it's Women's History Month, so I would be remiss if I didn't state the obvious. I think just in general, women are strong anyways. You guys are naturally, you guys are warriors. So I commend y'all, and and I love you guys. Like, men wouldn't be who we are without you guys. So that's that.
That's great. I love it.
So
well, yeah, we
go ahead.
need healthier men. We need the
Good.
relationship of the man and the woman to come into union again and have respect for each other. So that's a beautiful statement to make. We need that. So
Right.
thank you, Desmond.
Absolutely, absolutely. So going through what you've gone through in your life, right? It was a time where you questioned whether or not you will be able to thrive again, right? You care to speak on that a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I've had the devil following me for quite a long time,
Oh, that's never good.
Yeah. Well, it follows light.
Right.
It steals. I mean, there's no
Right.
coincidence of the battle on the big stages happening right now, right?
Right.
I think if I could go back, well, I can't go back because I was given assignments. Some people are
Right.
old, given assignments, and they're older souls. You're always learning. So I'm always learning. I'm always going to grow. I love to learn and grow. But I think for somebody out there, if you feel like you've been abandoned or betrayed, if you feel like you've gotten handed a bad deck of cards, I totally get it. But what I can say is, if you can show up every day and do one thing for yourself to start building that self-worth and self-love, I believe slowly small little doors will open up for you in ways that you can't even imagine. Like a lot of the jobs that were given to me that I talk about in this first book didn't come from me applying to them. It came when I was doing a lot of meditation work. I would get a phone call, and these were good jobs. And then I'd be sent for this job. You start meditating, you're sitting at a park, you meet somebody at the park bench. Oh, you do this, you do that. It's led more in a very different way than I think what a lot of times they're trying to teach you online. I would stay intimate with yourself and be protective of yourself. Be protective of the groups you're entering. I was a little naive in the beginning. I would say back in my late 30s and 40s, I wanted to be a part of a soul tribe group. I wanted to be part of this group. I was naive, and I realized it's not a bad thing to go solo. It's not a bad thing to just sort of, cautiously walk and make sure everything's okay. And I think we're in a time period of that because of the Epstein files, to be honest with you, because a lot of these people had large communities and they were very, the leaders were very abusive. So I'm not sure if that answered your question.
I got you. So, okay. So do you have someone in your life who's more, that sees more potential in your gifts than you do?
No, I've always been my own cheerleader. So
Right.
I think that people need to train themselves to be their own cheerleader. And I would say I do have, whether people believe this on your channel or not, I do have a connection to the angels. And so I have an angelic team now. So I channel Mr. Rogers and people like that. Actually, there are some videos where there's green orbs in my videos. So it's there. Or a white orb moving around because Mr. Rogers likes to show himself. But Mr. Rogers came in a couple years ago to heal my ancestral childhood issues with all these women and myself. And so I do channel him and other people, and angels. And I would say that's my big team. Those are my cheerleaders.
Okay. I mean, however way it comes, support is always greatly appreciated and needed. So
Well, for some people, it might be their animals. It could be
that's
their
true.
dog. It could be their cat. I had a connection to a donkey. Animals are messengers. I think, I want to inspire those who are out there. Like you're sitting at a park, you're crying, and all of a sudden an animal comes by. That's not a coincidence. Or, the animals have messages and can be a great form of healers and teachers. In fact, I'm going to promote it right now. There's a show that I was watching for the last couple of years. I don't know the whole title, but his name's Rocky. If you look up Rocky and sheltered abused dogs, it's a huge channel. It's like millions of following. But this man is brilliant. And when he's sitting with these dogs that come into the shelter, he's talking to them in a way that we should talk to people when they go through a troubled time. And the way he takes care of them to find a new home, it's just really trauma informed education, actually. And it's just really brilliant. Um, find things like that, that sort of stimulate you, because that's an outside the box thing that nobody would think,
Right.
that would actually have a great impact. But I find him to be much more resourceful than a lot of the blah, 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 blah online. Blah. I
Yeah.
mean, you're seeing the abused dog come in and it's shaking. You're seeing the body language and he's talking about it. And he's talking about how he comes in. And you just see all the lessons. And I think it's important for America because we don't know how to sit with each other's pain anymore. I mean, think
Yeah.
about it. You're at a coffee shop. Can you hold somebody crying for a little bit, or do you feel uncomfortable? A lot of us are so programmed to just check out. Not me, but do you know what I'm saying? Can you hold,
Right.
like, we want somebody to hold space for our pain, but can you hold space for somebody else's pain?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people can't, but I personally can. I mean, I'm all about encouraging people, uplifting people, and you know, like I tell this story a lot. One day I was at a store, and it was these two women on the bench, and I didn't know neither one of them, and I overheard the one woman. She was crying, and she was saying how she's undesirable, she's unloved, unwanted, and I couldn't help myself. I turned around, I sat next to her, and I said, "Listen, I know I don't know you, you don't know me, but I was like, there's a purpose for everybody, and there's a person for everybody, and I don't want you to ever feel that way, and I don't ever want to hear those words again, right?" I say, you got to love yourself, and once you love yourself, you'll find that right person, because God puts the right people in the right places. So I was like, find a way to put a smile on your face and just find something good in today. Find something positive to focus on. And it's crazy. She gave me a hug. Now that hug was actually awkward. Like, I wasn't
Mhm.
expecting it, but God just laid it on my heart to just speak to her. I mean, I've always been that person. Like, I always want to encourage people, uplift people. And we spoke about trauma. I've been through a lot of trauma where I felt unloved and unwanted, unappreciated, and I never wanted anybody else to feel that way. At a very young age, I always said I want to give back to the community. I always wanted to do for others that's not fortunate. I wanted to be that guiding light for those who felt battered and abused, and so on and so forth. So that just speaks volumes of my character. Like, that's just who I am. If I see people down and out, I'll try to help them out any way that I can, whether that's verbally or however. And I am a strong believer that, well, not a strong believer, but like one thing I always try to do is one good deed a day. You
I
know,
love that.
one good deed a day, and it just makes me feel empowered.
I'm so happy you came on my channel, and I'm so glad I get to share you with my audience and future audiences, because we need more men like you. Thank
Right.
you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to that woman, and using your
Right.
words and your energy. And thank you for it's interesting because when you asked me about my brother, and we're on our different stages, but he bought me a movie years ago, a DVD when they were popular, and it was called Pay It Forward. And he said,
Okay.
you remind me of the kid.
Yeah.
Pay it forward.
Yeah.
And I've always been that way, but unfortunately what I learned is nobody pays it back. And I know that
Right.
it's a harsh statement, but some people, they just expect you to give, give, give. So I've learned now that I need to learn to receive. And I'm
Right.
going to watch carefully about how my energy is utilized so that I made sure that I receive. But what you're doing each day, a good deed, which was totally about Mr. Rogers, you know, and really what I see in my community is it's the person that's doing the good deed. They never want recognition. They're not on the spotlight. They're
Right.
but they're so beautiful oracally. You know, you could see
Right.
their light and you could see that they just do this because it's really from their heart. And those are the people that I just want to celebrate, you know. So
Right. Right.
so
Right.
thank you I'm so glad we just immediately connected. It was kind of fast. And I think it's Mr. Rogers. He does
I mean,
this.
I tend to have that effect on women, so that's a joke. But yeah, I got you.
That's funny. That's good. But
But
it's inspiring. It's inspiring to hear somebody like you speak those because I can hear that it's actually truth and you're not
right.
just
Right.
like saying it to like say it, you know?
Right. Right. See, that's the thing. A lot of people ask me why, and I just equate it to just the traumas and my upbringing and me just feeling less than a lot of times. So that's what I equate it to. And one of my very first therapists in life, they told me about that the movie you was talking about, the Pay It Forward. And the way it was broken down to me was, paying it forward. Like for somebody that feels less than, like paying it forward, it's all about that feeling you get by giving others what you lacked or felt like you lacked in your life. So
Sure.
maybe all of this, and through the years, maybe this is how it developed and manifested. I'm not sure, but that's just who I am. And I just never want to see anybody down and out. I don't. I have my moments where I'm down and out, and I have a few people in my life that sometimes they get on my nerves. But they because they give me the harsh truth. They don't sugarcoat it. They be like, listen, knock this shit off. Like pick yourself up. Nobody gonna feel sorry for you. And I'm talking about when I'm at my lowest sometimes, and then like those words cut deep. But sometimes you need that. Sometimes you
Sure.
need to be cut deep to come to the realization that okay, you letting the devil win. You letting that evil entity take over and consume you. So I had to pick myself back up and just look myself in the mirror and say, you know what? No, I know my purpose and I know what I'm made for.
Mm.
I know what I was born to do. So let me pick myself up and be the man that I was designed to be. So at the end of the day, man, that's just me. That's
That's
just me.
beautiful. That's beautiful. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 40.
You're 40. Okay. So we're about
Yeah, I know.
13 years apart. You look
Yeah,
young.
I know. I know. I get that all the time. They say black don't crack. What can I say? Yeah. I mean, I think I'll be 60 still looking like this. That's
Oh,
great.
that's so great. But you're at
It,
that prime age of stepping into leadership more within what you're
right,
doing. So it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, it's
right.
great. Good.
Right. So hey, that's another thing. So you said leader, man. Like I've been like a kitchen manager for 8 years, and I used to tell people all the time, I'm not. Don't look at me as your boss, right? I'd rather be a leader than a boss because the bosses tell you what to do, and they do nothing but dictate and
Right.
delegate. I'd rather be a leader because leaders show you how to do it, and they lead the way and they just, pave the way for people that's beneath them to be better in life, to progress. So that's what I'm all about. Positivity, positive energy, alignment, and everything like that. So that's good.
And
So I did want to say this. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
well, I
sorry.
was
Go
just
ahead.
going to say, since you were talking, in a kitchen, a restaurant's hard business.
Right.
And orchestrating all that little that needs to be done, having somebody like you, I can see how that would excel. That is part of the game, is making people feel worthy
Mm-hmm.
of, that their purpose, is there. Do you mind if I share my Italian restaurant story right now, or
And just in a
you're
few.
gonna wait a
I just
minute?
had I just
Okay.
had a couple questions before that. So I wanted to talk about your book for a minute. So how
Okay.
many books do you have published?
This one is on Amazon. It just came out. It's called Transcending Victim to Goddess Part 1.
Okay.
And it is disrupting the family matrix and healing generational trauma from the bloodline. I wrote this book with my father, and I write about him on the back cover.
Okay.
I believe my father was John Horse in a past life. So, what we did is when my father passed in 2022, he told me to. There was a lot of things that happened right when he passed away, meaning I could hear him. My electricity was going on and off. And I could hear him reading his like his records, and I could also hear his pain. He got to see a lot of, he abandoned me in a lot of ways. He taught a family system to abuse me in a lot of ways. And I went through hell, and I actually was trying to save his life when he was dying. I was giving him unconditional love, even though he never showed up for me. And it was a beautiful, I wanted to do that for him, and that's in book 2. But he said, take the book that I had published years ago, Victim to Victory, off the shelf. I hadn't promoted it. It was a book that was written, I would say 10 years ago, while I was sick, God led. And it was a book that the right people found it to hire me as a trauma expert and coach. So it was all like, sometimes you write a book, but it's not really supposed to be like, I didn't publicize it at all. So the right people all around the world found it and hired me as a trauma coach. And that led me through my trauma career. Well, when my dad died, he said, take it off the shelf. And then like 6 or 7 months later, he said, we're going to rewrite it a very different way together. So I rewrote it with my father on the other side, meaning we're going to start to incorporate timelines of past lives in this life and how everything intersects. My dad wanted this book series to be tangible for anybody to start doing their own inner work. So after each chapter, we have a lot of questions spiritually and psychologically. And we also in this book, we introduced 3 meditations. We introduced, obviously, Reiki energy work in chapter 8. And I write as a theater arts. I think my book series will eventually be a movie. I write these characters. I meet Benjamin Franklin in my trauma room. I meet some of these people that were past life characters in my trauma room. And there's no coincidence to that. So when you talk about evil, when evil comes, and evil has come at me a lot, my ancestors had a lot coming at them, so things have to be cleaned up. So I've sat across from slave owners who know they were slave owners. I've sat across from people who know they were slaves, and it's not necessarily color. So we got to kind of get that. It's a soul database, and you can't lie about it, because victims, you can't lie when they start shaking out trauma. Like, this isn't a lie. Like when the body starts to shake and they're crying and then the rashes come, the body doesn't lie. But the mind can lie. And people have been masterful, especially when we see the Epstein files, of teaching mind control things that have nothing to do with holier people, higher conscious people. Those people that were mind controlling think that they could win anything. The game is up. The game is up. We're turning tables. So that's a little bit. And this is like, except for chapter 1, which is a little hard because you hear my story a little bit. But the rest of the chapters, chapter 2 is about meeting Jimmy Slide and the Tap Masters. It's a cool chapter. One of the chapters is how I get a job in India and I work on a television set. Talks about the theater arts a lot in this book, and the different experiences and the different cultures in interacting. But what we wanted to do is, the mental health therapists don't have a lot of this information, even with questions. They're projecting a lot. I want people to read my first chapter and then go through their questions and start writing. Okay, well, what's like I did in the therapy room with my clients. I just found that like a lot of my clients who had done traditional stuff for so long knew so little about themselves, and there's so much magic there, and so that's what this sort of, it's book 2 is coming soon, and it's leading into these characters and also this dyslexia I experience, right? Because certain types of abuse, sexual abuse, causes dyslexia emotionally and mentally that I start to rewire. So, sometimes you have an evil person in front of you and you think they're a good person because there's a dyslexia going on that you have to rewire. And then once you rewire it, you're looking and you're like, oh my God, the writing's on the table here. Get out, close the door, exit, other way. Let's go.
I love how animated you are. That's a beautiful thing. uh, so you said to become a master at something, you must first overcome your deepest trials. What were some of your deepest trials that you had to overcome?
Good question. Well, when I was about 40 years old and I lost my ability to walk,
Mm,
and I mean, like, I could walk a little bit, but it was a lot of pain because your legs are your roots, your root chakra, mom and dad, grandma, great grandma,
right.
um, for about 2 years. So I went from having a Guinness Book of World Records, turning on one foot, being very physically dominated, to not being able to walk much and being extremely sick and having my whole family tribe abandon me and judge me and not believe my story. So my whole world, and actually even my yoga community that I had built up, now that I was sick, they were gone. It was kind of like, oh, I didn't teach them the psychology of yoga. I was teaching
Right.
them physical yoga, but I wasn't actually teaching what you were talking about, like, reach out. Do you need some soup? Like type of thing.
Right.
So
Right.
that was an ego, you have an ego death when you have that. And it really humbled me. It caused me to have a lot more depth, and it caused me to see things. When I got better, it caused me to actually, I knew when I was better, like my PTSD was better at that point, because I was driving around Pittsburgh and that was the first time I saw the plastic on the ground. And I was like, why is there so much plastic nowadays on the ground? And that started me understanding about this water issue that we have in America. And this was 15, 20 years ago. Now everybody's hearing about microplastics and how they're in your blood. But I was talking about this 10 years ago. I've always been way ahead of my time. But unfortunately, I hate when people say, oh, you're ahead of your time. It's like, well, why can't somebody support a divine feminine in their time and get some things moving? Why does everybody have to die? And why do we have to have all these systems fall the way they're falling? I don't quite understand it. But yeah, it's like my old student who sent me the glyphosate stuff. She said, you've been talking about this forever. Yeah, I have. And it's getting worse. That's the problem I'm having with the leaders in America. Things are actually getting worse. So we can't keep talking. We actually have to come to the table. And I think I'm a consultant for that. So hire me. And we have to figure out what we do next. I have some ideas about that. I kind of went on a tangent there. I do that. So you
It's
just gotta
okay.
you gotta steer me back. Come back on the road. Here we
I
go.
got I got you. So you said that your ancestors came over from Italy to New York to Pittsburgh. So now if you want to tell me about
Oh,
your
yeah, yeah,
story.
yeah. Yeah, well, because I saw the Italian thing. You have to understand there's a deep connection of pasta with my father. So so when
I
you're in the
mean,
kitchen tonight, think of my father. No, so yeah, and I don't know, these are the cliff notes I know, because I don't know a whole lot about my dad's side of the family. There were a lot of fights. There were a lot of, they're a part of our family. Now they're not a part. I didn't know them very well. I knew them from the outside and I knew cliff notes,
all right,
but what I do know is, we'll just say my great great grandmother, I could be wrong on that. She comes from Italy to New York. Her husband dies. She has two small kids. She goes from New York to Pittsburgh. So she's raising two small kids with an 8th grade education. How she got the funds to have a bar and restaurant, I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. But she starts to have this small Italian bar and restaurant. That's 24/7 work when you own that. Basically, back in the early 1900s, that's, you don't, it's work all day long.
all
And
day.
basically the politicians at the time, and this is like literally 10 minutes from where I live, the politicians, the white men, come in and they say, hey, look, you got to feed the blacks in the back. And she was a feisty little woman. She said, I will feed whoever walks through the front door to pay my bills to feed my children.
Right, right.
And they left. I guess they left her alone, and it became the first black bar restaurant she actually made a killing. I mean, she worked all her life and she started to invest. She started to grow businesses that eventually, I believe, in that family unit became very greedy, didn't work together, didn't know how to work together. And the women were really the workers and the business savviers. And they weren't, I don't want to say they weren't given credit for it, but the men were like blowing the money. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the women were working hard. That's my interpretation of it. And if there was one thing, my mom every now and then would give me a compliment. It was rare, but she did give me a compliment once saying, "You're a lot like the Ferri women of those." And she's right.
All right.
They saw forward. You know, she invested in who taught her about the stock market back then? You know, she invested in things that you just don't, you know, you're like, what? But I'm very proud of those roots because they live into the connection of everything in my personal life and my personal soul database and connection into how do we heal America and really, and it's kind of getting deep here. I won't go there today, but yeah, that's my story. That's my story on the restaurant stuff.
So, you know, and it's apropos because, you know, like I said, it's Women History Month, and, you know, a lot of people don't give women credit, right? And, you know, I think especially like in America, not just in America, in life in general, like women are the backbone, right? Women have contributed so much to society and mankind. And then it's just a lot of you guys' efforts and contributions tend to get swept under the rug. So especially during the month of March, I am here to say that, you know, I appreciate every one of you again, because you guys do a lot. You go through child labor. It's a lot of things that men do not have to deal with. And we say, thank God we ain't got to deal with it, but we never give the just due to women. So I am here today to give every woman the credit, especially mothers. You know, the mothers of the world are the greatest. You know, and I like to tell, again, a lot of women or mothers feel like they're a bad parent, bad mother. And I look at things differently. I say, as long as you're trying, you're a great mother.
Right. I agree with you.
It's when you give up and you stop trying, that's when we have to worry. But as long as you continue to try and put forth that effort, I feel like you're a great mother. Like me and my mom bump heads all the time, love her to death. But, you know, growing up, you know, in school, I don't know if they still do it these days, but in school, they always used to say, who's your hero? You know, a lot of people say firefighters or Batman or the Supermans or whatever superhero, fill in the blanks. I always said my mother. And growing up, you know, at that age, a lot of people used to try to poke fun and say things. And it didn't bother me. It didn't shake me because I said, you know, when the world counted my mother out, even myself at times, she persevered. She made it out. She showed that tenacity, that determination, that grit, and that fortitude. She showed all of that. She displayed that. And me growing up as a young Black male, I said, if a Black woman can do that, it's limitless. It's no, the sky's the limit to what I can do, right?
Absolutely.
Because if a woman can do it, because we men are brought up to believe that we are the dominant ones, we're strong, we this, and we're more powerful than women. But psychologically, women are more powerful and dominant than men, right? Again, we don't give women credit for it. So at a young age, I started to pick up on things like that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to add that to my toolbox. I'm going to take what I learned from all these women and apply it to my life to make myself better, because I believe in being complete. I like to be all around. And you know, so again, I give every mother, every woman, all the credit in the world.
I think that's so beautiful. So beautiful. And I think when people are not healing their traumas and they marry, what I've seen in my trauma practice is they're competing with each other. Right. The man and the woman. And that has to stop. You know, the union of a man and a woman, you were giving different gifts. The man to protect. A lot of men have lost that instinct. The man to open the door, the man to support, the man to also understand finances. But my thing is to make sure that you're not holding the finances over a woman, but you're actually supporting the woman.
It goes twofold. It goes the other way too, because a lot of nowadays,
true.
It's from my perspective, through my lens. What I'm saying is a lot of men are content with being what norms say that women should be,
Okay.
and the women are becoming more like the men. And it blows my mind because I cannot be a submissive. I cannot take that lesser role. I cannot allow a woman to dictate and have control over me, because at the end of the day, men were created to be the head, right? And
Sure.
one of the questions I always ask a lot of women is this. I said, can an unemployed man still be the head of the household? 99.9% of the women tell me no, and I'm like, that's why. Because they to be a provider is not just financial. And once you're into
Sure.
a relationship on financial basis, that means you're not going into that relationship with the right intent, right?
Right. Right.
Because it should never be about what a man makes. So providing could be intellectually, mentally,
I think that
psychologically.
that has to be decided though within each marriage, each relationship. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to go back to my brother.
Okay.
My brother, we grew up blue collar, so
Mm.
we made ends. We had some things, but it wasn't like, we didn't have, a lot of things. We made it by. But when he made the decision to marry his wife, he was still trying to get a teacher job. A teacher job back then was hard. So he was
Right.
applying and he was applying and he was applying consistently, but he had to work as a tire salesman. It
Right.
wasn't his glamorous job, but he had to work, and put food on the table. And I don't know if he would even remember this, but I remember it. He didn't want anybody to know, but he didn't have health insurance for a couple of years, but his wife did.
Right.
So money is energy and it needs to be discussed beforehand. When I say about money is, and maybe I'm too old school or maybe I'm too high school. I don't hire conscious school. I don't know because I don't mix in with the average in general, but there has to be a respect around. So I've seen a lot of domestic violence in my practice and in my lineage. So women can't get out marriages sometimes because they don't have anything. That is not okay. So when you're entering into a relationship, like there are books that I recommend on my YouTube channel that you should read with your partner. You should understand your relationship with money. It's going to play a huge part in your life. It pays your bills right now. So you have to understand it and you have to understand whether or not you work with it. You can't hide around that. It can't just be about, I'm attracted to you
Right.
because the lust comes and goes. The bills don't, And so having dealt with a lot of women who have had nothing, and some of those women built up their masculine, my grandmother actually was screwed out of divorce of her own, business. So, and it's interesting because so it's important as you're dating. And I think we're losing the idea of what dating is. Unfortunately, dating is a beautiful dance, but it's not what Hollywood or the music industry taught us.
Right.
Well, we've lost the intimacy of that dance, but part of that dance is what is our relationship with these things and how are we going to work with them together? Of course, people lose jobs and things happen and you have to work with those struggles.
Right.
But in general, like if my biggest issue right now, because I've dealt with so much domestic violence with women and different situations where they've lost everything in a marriage, that if you have a marriage, I do think that the woman should have her own banking account, her own credit card, and be able to operate those things.
I disagree, but we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I mean, but I guess
Have you worked with domestic violence? Have you worked with women with domestic violence?
I mean, I've advocated, I've spoken to a lot of women through domestics, but
yeah, so I would say before you make that judgment, I would actually go to a shelter or go to some nonprofits and have some deep conversations and really start to understand their sides of the story. Because I'm not talking about one case or two cases. I'm talking about hundreds.
No, I got you. I understand that, but you know what goes unnoticed though, and not to speak too much about men during you guys' month, but what goes unnoticed a lot is the abuse that men take from women. Because at the end of the day, abuse is abuse, and nobody should be subjected to it. But like, for men don't
I'm
report
not saying
domestic
that. I
abuse
mean,
and
I'm
stuff of that
saying
nature.
that in the beginning of the dating process, everybody
Right.
needs to have their psychologist or whatever, their trauma education to be responsible adults. We're not teaching this in high schools. We should be. Finances need to be a part of that conversation.
Oh, you said
So
finance.
whatever you
Okay.
decide is your personal decision. It's not my decision. I'm just saying from all of the 15 years, and let me tell you, a lot of cases, social workers, you know, I'm not jumping to a conclusion of one thing. You decide on your own, but I'm saying in general, I want to empower women to be able to hold their own finances because things happen. Narcissists, when you think of like the Dr. Ramani, she wrote the book, It's Not You. And she was the first mental health therapist a couple years ago to come out and say, in mental health, we were never educated on how to help victims with narcissism. We were never educated on narcissism. That's a problem. That means
Right.
in mental health beforehand, victims were never able to be given tools or psychology to defend themselves and help themselves heal. That's a problem. So these are deep, deep issues. So it's not personal. I'm going on basis of large sum of information, but it is personal for each person who dates, and when I date, that will be a conversation. My person that I end up being with will have to read my books and have to understand how I feel safe and secure in that relationship.
Right.
So, because money is sacred, I feel
Right.
money is very sacred.
No, it is. I mean, a lot of
No,
people.
it's not. It is. To me, money is sacred. So we're
Gotcha.
not programmed that way yet because people have used money in a lot of different ways with ego. But
Right. It's
money will
weaponized.
eventually be sacred again. And when you misuse money in ways that it's been, like selling children, selling illegal drugs, then you have to deal with your karmic consequences because
Right.
money, just like people, are energy. People are sacred. Money will be eventually sacred again, as far as I'm concerned, and what I want to project out there. People are programmed that it's evil because it's been utilized evilly, lustfully, selfishly for too long.
Got you.
I go there, man. You called me in. If you're gonna ask it, I'm gonna go there. I love you, but I'm gonna go there.
I got you. So I meant to ask you before. Have you ever been to Italy before?
No, but I would love to go. Have you ever gone?
I have not, but I definitely, before I leave this earth, I definitely would like to go to Italy. It's definitely in my top 5 places to go. Like Italy has, because I'm a huge foodie. I'm a chef on my own accord. I just love to cook, and I specialize in Italian food. That's one of the things I specialize in. I whip it up.
Oh,
And so it's one thing to be an American and eat Italian food over here, but it's like I know the atmosphere and the culture is so much different over there, and that's part of being a foodie. You like to a deep dive into the culture, and I would like to experience that. I would like to go out the country and go to different places and try food, just to interact and mingle with different cultures and see how they
yeah.
live.
Have you listened to? So I've been doing some takes on my YouTube. Jim Breyer, the comedian.
I have not. I don't listen to too many comedians because a lot of people
well,
I don't find a lot of things funny.
Yeah, he did a show called Italian Bread, something on Italian bread. I was on the floor laughing so hard because his wife is like me. She's like all into the health thing, right? And glyphosate is really the issue of gluten-free. I don't know if she realizes that. But when they went to Italy, so when you eat bread here, you get bloated. You get inflammation because it has poisons in it, because that's our soil. It stinks. But when you go to Italy, you can eat all the bread you want and you don't get fat and you don't feel like you're going to fall asleep afterwards because the poisons are like suck. Like it is like different. And you realize, oh my God, like this is real food. So I can't wait for you to go because it will be curious being a food lover, feeling if you can feel the difference. I'll be curious. Like, I hope you go in the next couple of years, because I'd like to hear, like, can you feel in your body the difference? Because I've heard from people who travel outside of America how much the food is healthier.
Right. I mean, I've heard that too, and I've heard that like it just makes you feel happier. I've heard that a lot too. When you go to whatever country it is, it's actually it makes you happier. I don't know. Like
yeah, because you're not being poisoned. I mean, you're not like, you eat this meal and then you're like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like, that's not normal. It's called toxins. And I hate to freak people out, but this is where we're at in America. I mean, it's serious. Like, so there in Italy, you can eat all the pasta and bread and not be like so bloated and not gain 20 pounds like in a meal, like you're like, oh my God. What's your favorite dish to make?
See, oh my God, as a chef, as a foodie, I get asked that question on a daily. And it's one of those difficult questions for me, is because I'm just a lover of food. I like I said, I'm a foodie and I like to try a lot of things. So you said my favorite food to eat or to make?
Well, are they different?
Yes, because just because you like something don't mean you ever tried to make it, but it's still a difficult question for me, because I just, my palate is upper echelon. I feel like I eat so much, and I'll be driving on the road and I have a notebook just of restaurants I would like to try. If I've never been there before, different cultures like Colombian food, Mediterranean food, Indonesian food, Japanese food, like anything. And I drive by and I make a list of it and I go there and I try it. And it's sometimes it's just crazy, Cal. Some cultures, like the food is so simple, but when you eat it, that that fusion of flavors and stuff, it's mind-blowing. You look at the ingredients, you like, it's basic, but once you put it together, it's like, wow. It's a lot of things that I've had that I'm like, I don't think that's going to blend well together, but when you eat it, when you taste it, it makes your taste buds just tap dance.
That's nice. I like that.
So it's hard for me to answer that question. Like, as far as what's my favorite thing to make, I don't know, because I feel like I'm always evolving. I'm always trying to take it up a notch. I always want to make something different. Now, my favorite food to eat is basic. I'm a big lover of steak, shrimp. I love scalloped potatoes. I love those things in particular. But as far as favorite food, I don't really have any, man. Because if I haven't tried it, I want to try it. Like, I tell people this story, and they be like, "You're disgusting," but like, I like to try the things people won't eat. Like, I've had goat nuts before. And people would look at me like, "You did what?" I had pig brain before, but I've gotten tricked at eating stuff like that. Like, people would tell me to try something. I'm like, okay. And sometimes I might say, "You try it first. Make sure you ain't trying to poison me." And I try it. And this is the thing. Once you tell that person, "Oh, it's good," they're like, "How is it?" If you say it's good, once they tell you what it is, you can no longer say it's nasty. And that's how I was really introduced to a lot of different foods.
What introduced you into the love of food or in the kitchen? Like, what introduced you to that?
You know what? I can't even put my finger on it. I know when it was, but I don't know what drove me to it. Like, I remember when I was in 7th grade and I had in my mind, I said, you know what? Because I was always an artist. I like to draw a lot, and the whole architecture and I, I was in home ec in 7th grade, and we were just making basic foods. The home ec in 7th grade, you don't really do no big, preparation or anything. And I said, you know what? I would love to own my own business. And I think it started with me saying, I want a blueprint restaurant. I want to blueprint restaurants and stuff like that. It might have started there. But then when I started making crepes and little cuisines like that in school, I said, you know what? I'm on to something here. And then I remember we had chefs, world-renowned chefs, come to, to the class, and they was going over stuff like, oh, this how much this costs, this how much that costs. And it deterred me. And I said, you know what? It's never going to happen. It was a dream. Oh, well, it's never going to happen because I'm never going to be rich. And once I stepped into adulthood, I said, you know what? Let me do it again, because I love food. Food makes you happy. When you're depressed and you eat, I can't speak for you, but it always make me happy. When I'm angry, I eat. Just do something for me mentally that, like, I just forget everything that happened and I just feel comfort. right?
Well, I
So
feel like the food, unfortunately, like we have a disconnect right now in our culture where people aren't sitting at the kitchen table anymore with their family and having a meal. Like that's a rare thing,
that
you know?
you're
So
right.
I think it needs to be retaught, but maybe in a
Yes,
more intimate way. And it could be retaught in a different type of restaurant. I have a blueprint for a different type of restaurant. Um, so yeah, it needs to be, we need to reteach how we can sit at the table again and have meaningful conversations. And like for us today, we don't agree on everything, but we still respect each other.
right,
We still, you know what I mean? We can still appreciate each other because the basic foundational stuff we agree on, that's the most important thing, you know?
right,
That foundation, what is that foundation? And that's things that, you know, my book talks about so that people can have that so that, you know, a lot of women, I don't know why I'm going on it, but a lot of women that I counseled that were married, that were unhappy, that were this or that, the way they were going about dating, I've never had a television set as an adult. So I don't watch any of these reality shows or what's been taught program wise, because a show is a program. When you turn on a podcast, it's a program. You're programming. You know what I mean? You're downloading right now. Um,
but so is life. Life is programming. You learn through your trials and tribulations, and
and who you're around. So it's
right,
about your exposure of what you're exposed to. Um, so for these women, it was shocking for me, but also I learned so much. So I was grateful for their honesty and their bravery of how much they lied in very not in a malicious way, but they were just lying to conform to be liked at a date. And that is not healthy. That is not how
right,
we find authentic love, you
right,
know? And so it was teaching them to, and so some of them, as they started to love themselves, they had to reevaluate, you know, they had to rework with their partner. And some of them had greater relationships, or some of them had to divorce, but some of those divorces happened with ease. They actually
right.
became better friends divorcing because they acknowledged that there was a lie in the beginning stages of dating. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
It's a really interesting thing when you get responsible for yourself. You're
right,
accountable for yourself. So the kitchen and the food, you know, I used to eat sugar to cover my pain. Obviously, I had to detox that because it causes cancers and it's not the way to go. I feel pain, I cry pain, I shake pain, I write pain, I meditate pain, I sing pain, I dance pain. I think food is nourishment. When I
hmm,
eat a meal, it's because I'm filling something up inside of me that's going to give me nourishment because my body is my temple.
right. I think for at least for me, I think food, for lack of better words, or poetically speaking, since I love poetry so much, food for me is like the comfort from a mother.
Right.
Right, you know, when you're a baby, your mom will just hold you and just that connection you feel. I think that's what food is for me. It just puts me in a happy place. It makes me feel like can't nothing go wrong, right? And
Mhm.
that's how special food is for me. So, you know, as a chef, as a person that you know, takes passion in the art of cooking, it reminds me of a mother's touch, a mother's love. So that's just for me.
Well,
Um,
that's interesting because there are a few people I know that when they are preparing food,
mhm,
it's a meditation for them. So
yes,
you're setting the intention of love. You're setting,
mhm,
so there, and when I eat their food, there is something that feels different because it's coming from a place of, I don't just have to put this stuff together. I mean, I got to go, you know, let's just, it's coming from a place of, because like for instance, I live in a large Indian community, believe it or not, in Pittsburgh, and they live a very different culture. They 3% divorce rate. You see a lot of them with their kids and families on the weekends walking together. They're very engaged.
yes,
um, and it's not uncommon for an Indian person, like I remember when I used to go to restaurants, I would sit in the lobby with my book by myself, and an Indian couple would come up and they would start talking about yoga or meditation. They'd be like, "Oh, do you want to sit and eat with us?" I've had Indian people invite me to their house with barely knowing me. I've had people invite me when I live in apartment complex, because food to them is their way of saying it's sharing. It's very
Right.
sacred to their culture, and it's very beautiful. And
Hmm.
that's the only culture in Pittsburgh that has ever done that for me, which is very
Right.
interesting.
And that's another thing what I was saying earlier about going to different countries and just culturally, like America, like I love America, obviously, right? But like it's a lot of things that we like that other cultures have, and that's like that continuity, that cohesion, right? We missing a lot of that over here. We in America, we're at war with ourselves way too much than we should be, you know.
Yeah.
So when you go to these other cultures, they're there for each other. They bring each other.
Yeah.
Like the Jewish community is big. You know, they
Yeah.
don't have to be family, but guess what? You're Jewish. They look at it like this is our community. This is a community, and we're all about uplifting each other and helping the next one. It's
Yeah.
not about being selfish. It's not being.
No.
It's not living that scarcity lifestyle. It's not being crabs in the bucket. It's about uplifting. And I know in the Black community, that's something we definitely suffer from. And you know, like I said, at a young age, I always said I want to give back. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be put in a box. I hate being put in a box. I hate labels. I hate titles. I want to be greater than. I want to be what you say I'm not going to be. Not just because
Good.
you said that, but for myself, because I'm all about growth and development. Right. Every day is a learning lesson, and it's about coaching, teaching, and development. And that's what I tell my kids all the time. Like, you know, when you don't think you're being watched, you're being watched. You're
Oh
being
yeah.
judged. You know, people 10 years from now might be like, I don't want nothing to do with you because they already have this perception of who you are. They have this image of who you were 10 years ago. And even if you hit all these milestones in life, you make all these strides in a positive way, they're never going to see that, right?
Right.
Because their lens is already foggy. And they won't take the time out to put that work in, take a shirt and wipe that lens off. They already got this perception of who you are, and they can't get further than that. They're scared of change, right? And that's the thing. So I'm glad this way to go back to what you said about reintroducing family dinners and stuff like that. I agree with like, and again, it's apropos because you're Italian, and I was watching this show because one of my favorite shows to watch is cooking shows, and it was this Italian chef. He when his very first restaurant that he opened, and it didn't have like tables like we see when we go dining now where it's individualized. It was one big old table that went into a circle, and he used to tell people to come in. He's like, oh, where we gonna sit? Like, sit anyways, because when you come in my establishment, my restaurant, we're family. I want you to feel like it's family. I want you
Mm.
to interact with other people. He used to interact, you know, in the video, he interacted, he talked, he joked around as if they were family. And
Mm.
it he wound up getting a Michelin star because the reviews, right? It was
Mm.
through the roof, and people love that atmosphere. And they was like, you know what? When we come in there, we do feel like family, and that's what I would like to do. And I tell my kids all the time that like I want to be able to have like family dinners where we eat at the table and you know do blessings over the food because I know I wasn't brought up like that. Like you know,
No, we weren't there.
I had some family members that did it, but like it was nothing that was okay. It's dinner time. This is what we're gonna do. Is you go in your room, you go there. We eat wherever we want to, whatever hour. So I think that is a
Well, it
powerful thing to
also
promote.
introduces, so when you have the waitresses trained as healers, which brings in
Yes.
a whole other psychology, you teach that, like, say you had a table of some parents and kids.
Mhm.
Because I've worked in children's programs. I've worked extensively in a lot of teaching programs everywhere. So I have a really diverse background, which makes me actually somebody that can put blueprints together for new businesses. Because if you're only in one lane, you're very limited in a box. That's why I'm always saying, don't be afraid to step outside and get into other arenas, because then it opens your eyes to something else. But let's say you had a family sitting together at a table, you know, within that prayer, the blessing, you can have a child create it.
Mhm.
Just have a child create it. Ask them, how do we want to bless this food tonight? And so they get to have their own voice and their own ritual that's not handed down to them, but is their own from within. And so we start to create that sort of authentic individuality, because children come in with so much information and we end up blocking all of it through chemicals, through our programming of, oh, just shut up. You know, I would say this too. I don't know why, but my brother's coming through in this, and maybe it's because I feel a brotherly energy with you. But years and years ago, I never spoke up to I looked at my brother as a parent. I mean, literally raised me, a little boy raising me, and that's the way I looked at it. So in a lot of ways, I suppressed a lot of things that I wanted to say to him. He was very hard to communicate. It is what it is. He's a good guy, but years ago when his kids were in high school, there was something going on. I don't even remember, but we sat down at a park for 3 hours, and we were having a heated discussion for the first time in our lives. It was hard. I didn't know how to get through to him. It was just hard to talk to him. And I had all these issues with my mom and my dad. So there was all these things, but somehow, some way, I just kept my patience, and I kept my voice, and I kept saying certain things. And then at the end of the conversation, out of nowhere, he shocked me. He said, "If you had some wisdom for me, what would it be?" Like, here's my brother, my big brother, asking me for wisdom. I'm not allowed to talk, but now he's you know what I mean? Like, I was shocked. And I said, don't look at your kids as if they don't have anything to teach you. They're your teachers. They're your angels. And then the next day he called me and apologized. And he said, "I'm going to be a better man. I'm going to be a better father." And he was a better father and a better man. Our relationship was challenged for its own reasons, but he did step up in those arenas because I was concerned about my nieces. I was concerned about some patterning. And it was really hard to find the voice back in the words. You know what I mean? So there's so many different things that can be trained in a new type of setting. This is just one out of all types of businesses that need to change. They actually do need to change in order for America specifically to get to a higher frequency. This is a deep, deep dive. Anytime you want to pick my brain on it, I'll be up for it. But it's like, because the kitchen is the place where everybody migrates. The kitchen is the place but we don't need to gossip anymore about each other. We need to migrate and start to celebrate each other.
Right. Like every meal should be like a celebration of life.
Yes.
Right. It's like every meal should be like a Thanksgiving moment.
Yes.
Where you give thanks,
Yes.
It should be a place where you take solace and you rejoice. That's the way I say it anyways. I'm not sure how deeply rooted are you with your roots, the Italian roots?
I'm not deeply rooted. I only have a small percentage. If you actually go into, I don't necessarily believe in the whole DNA bloodline testing, but I have done some of that. I'm not like deeply rooted into that. I have a lot of questions about the medical fraud that has happened in the United States. So I base more of my information on my ancestral stuff through all the, obviously, healing, shaking, information that's come into to my being through my soul family. Why do you ask?
Oh, no. Because I was going to ask like questions about like Italian families and the upbringing, heritage, things of that nature, things that might be myths or true, things like that.
I'm not educated enough on that world.
Okay, I got you. So, all right. So I do have one question that you may or may not be able to answer. Since we was talking about food, right? In your opinion, what is the most underrated Italian dish that tourists rarely order?
That tourists rarely order. Well, see, my one of my favorites was sweet potato gnocchi.
Oh, that's an Italian dish. I didn't know Italians was big on sweet potatoes, right? You said sweet potato gnocchi?
Yeah. I mean, I was a big lasagna person, but now I'm a vegan, so I would do vegan lasagna.
Got you. So what made you turn vegan?
Healing trauma.
Got you.
Healing trauma was the best decision. Detoxing sugars, so getting on a medical grade water, detoxing glyphosate, which is not easy to do in the bloodstream. I was a big meat potato eater, obviously in Pittsburgh in my 20s and 30s. And I don't want to eat animals anymore. Don't judge anybody that does, but being really connected to the animal kingdom and understanding how, I mean, if I was in a forest and I had to eat, I would kill the animal, do a ritual. I get it, but I'm not. So that's not my lifestyle. Superfoods are really powerful. I've anti-aged a lot, so it's a really exciting thing at my age. I'm moving better than I ever thought could be possible at 53. So, that's kind of what sparks me in the kitchen: superfoods, greens, things that light up my cells. That
Right.
and I do pasta's my treat. I don't eat
Right.
pasta on a regular basis, but it's my treat. But yeah, so that's that transition happened when I was 40, and it was judged a lot, to be honest with you, in my community, because I couldn't go to certain restaurants anymore. I couldn't go here. Everything was toxic. And that's why I want to build new types of businesses so that we can be healthier. And you can still have your meats. I mean, there's farm fed and all that, and healthy stuff. I'm not against it. It's just not my choice. But in general, it just got harder and harder to go out socially because I was so sensitive that when I ate something, I'd come home and I'd be bloated, or I'd feel sick, or I'd be in the bathroom. I'd be like, why did I spend all that money if I'm not getting any nutrients? So it's kind of like that sort of dance. Now, with everybody, there's been a lot of death, unfortunately, and a lot of sickness. Our sickness has increased. There is a movement happening in Pittsburgh, and people are waking up. Finally, they're starting to say, okay, we can't continue to eat these things. What are we going to do? And we have some serious issues because our farmers are using some poisons on the land still, and it's not good.
Yeah, it's never good. Well, Miss Heather, that's going to conclude today's episode. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on the show today, and you're more than welcome to come on, any other future shows. But I hope whoever's been watching today gained something from this, felt encouraged, uplifted, learned anything. I want to thank you for your continued support. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and continue to like, share, and comment. And have a blessed day.
Thank you so much. Blessings, everybody.